Well, as promised, we're still on the Nevada Northern.
Right.
It was fun.
Oh, it's a blast.
Well, we did something this time that we've been talking about doing for a long, long time, but you got to do a few things. There's hoops you got to jump through.
Boy, are there hoops.
Yeah, I had to even take we both took it, the Book of Rules test.
Right.
Because they won't let you drive on the railroad unless you know how to drive on the railroad and how to, signals and all of the different things. And what we wanted to do was actually drive the 1956 Farimont High Railer.
Isn't that neat?
It's a 56 Pontiac that was converted into a High Railer by Farimont. Anyway, that's this week's show, is the Farimont High Railer.
Hi, my name's Con Trumbull. I'm the train master and archivist here at the Nevada Northern Railway.
Yeah. And you're taking us for a ride on that speeder.
Yeah.
Or
yeah,
it's not a speeder,
18.
it's a High Railer.
Yeah, not a speeder.
Speeder, everyone has a speeder.
Yeah, nobody wants to go on a speeder now.
High
rails are where it's at.
Cool. So a High Railer is usually a pickup truck.
Right.
But it's something that's been converted into a vehicle that can run either on the streets or on the tracks. And one of the companies that builds speeders and High Railers and everything is Farimont.
Oh.
Anyway, the railroad bought this guy in 1956, and unfortunately, they got rid of it at some point in time. And so the museum wanted to get it back. Well, how do you get something back that's been scrapped out? Well, you reproduce it.
Right.
So they got themselves a 56 Pontiac, and I don't know if the Farimont had anything to do with it, because the company still exists, but they rebuilt the High Railer.
That is so neat.
It's accurate down to the lettering and the color and everything. It occupies the same space.
Right.
So I guess you could say it's the same machine. Years ago I had a Farimont speeder.
Right, you told me about that.
Well, it was really neat, but it's a little bit of a challenge to take something hundreds of miles, if not thousands of miles, out to an event somewhere. It isn't like you can just show up somewhere with your Farimont speeder, or in this case, High Railer. So there's logistics involved.
Right.
So I finally decided, I'd just sell it. But I always at the time wanted a High Railer as opposed to a speeder. A speeder is a dedicated vehicle that just runs on track, but you can see here a High Railer is just a regular automobile, runs on regular automobile tires, but then it has these metal wheels that can be dropped down onto the rails that simply guide it. The weight and traction and everything is still provided by the tires.
I love the modifications they've made on this.
Yeah, it almost looks like a custom car.
It really does, and in a way it is.
It is, yeah.
Right.
But they have to extend the whole front end here to accommodate the extra hardware of these metal wheels.
Right, and also it looks like a Continental Kid or something, but in reverse.
They've got a whole series of garages over here by the locomotive shop. This used to be the bus garage.
Oh.
Because after they discontinued passenger service, they put in bus service, and they kept 2 different buses in this bus garage. But they also maintained a whole fleet of High Railers over here in these other garages.
Right.
Today, it's just all High Railers that live in all of these garages, because they still use a lot of High Railers here.
They sure do.
Everybody, what better way to maintain the track and everything is to go out with a High Railer. In this picture, we can see a Ford pickup truck from back in the 1970s.
Right, about a 73 it looks like.
Yeah, and it's been converted into a High Railer. This is at Cherry Creek.
Oh, neat.
The old Cherry Creek. We went down there and explored. The tank is still sort of there.
It's sort of kind of there, yeah.
But they use a lot of these High Railers here on the railroad, as all railroads do. It's just such a great way to maintain the track. This is the inside of the bus garage here. And today, it just serves the various high Railers. I don't even know how many High Railers they've got, but
it's hard to say, but I imagine a few.
Yeah, we've seen 3 or 4 of them here. Now, some of the modifications to the vehicle are more than just these wheels that drop down. For one thing, these vehicles have to have automatic transmissions. It's not able to be shifted. And you can see here the controls for the automatic transmission are connected to an entire linkage. As there are considerable speed restrictions, you have to operate this on the tracks in low gear at all times. And so there's actually a system here that when you put the transmission into low gear, it locks the steering wheel so that you can't turn it.
Right.
Because if you were to turn the steering wheel, you could derail the whole thing.
Oh, I imagine.
Because the tires are resting right on the rails. So you have to make sure your wheels are facing absolutely forward, and then you put it in low gear, and that locks the wheels into position.
Neat.
And then you lower the metal wheels. Now, it will also operate in reverse, of course, because you have to be able to back up.
Of course.
But it doesn't lock the steering wheel in reverse, so you have to be a little bit careful when you're backing up. Okay, we're lining ourselves out onto the main line, which means we also had to contact the dispatcher. We had already been given a track warrant, and we were now authorized to be on the main line, but we had to notify the dispatcher that we were about to pull out onto the main line. So what does an archivist do?
I handle our historic paper record, about 3,500 cubic feet of material.
We've been up there and seen so many of the receipts going all the way back to the first time.
Yep, that's what I do, and I've been digitizing and putting online a lot of our stuff. So.
It's actually here 35 years ago for those first runs. And even just before that, when Kennecott was still, there was a lot of negotiation. I believe it was just the shops that had been given over, no track rights, no anything. Okay, well, we're about to change positions. And Con is about to turn the console over to me.
Oh, gee.
Yeah, the controls over to me, and off we go. I'm now driving a high railer on the main line.
Oh, yep. Driver's ed is in session.
I had a little bit of trouble getting it into gear because of the locking mechanism, again, that locks the steering wheel. And then we had to quickly review the speed restrictions and so on before we were clear to go. So he wanted to point out to me how the speedometer works and show that we were speed restricted to 15 miles an hour.
No hot rodding.
No hot rodding. You can't burn rubber even though the tires are in contact with the rail. No, don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. So they actually have programs out here where you can run just about any of the equipment they have. You can run even the steam engines.
Wasn't that fun?
Except not only do you have to pass the book of rules, but
yes.
you also have to go to a complete locomotive school.
I would imagine.
That takes a day.
Yes,
Yeah.
I would imagine before you start out.
They're not just going to turn the throttle of a steam engine over to you and say, just hit the high rail out there and the high iron and let's go for it. No.
Let's have fun.
Yeah. So no, you have to go through an entire class, whether you're going to be running the diesel or the steam engines, or in our case, the high railer.
Right.
One thing about the high railer is you just have to show that you have a driver's license, but then you have to pass book of rules.
Right.
And we actually had a lot of fun studying for that.
Oh, I learned a lot.
Yeah, it's a 150-page book of rules.
Right.
And they question you on just about every aspect of that.
Right.
Before they'll turn you loose out here.
Right.
I went through an old product. wanted to blow the horn for the crossings, but there is no horn. So I thought maybe I should bring one of those little air canister horns and honk that way. And he says, well, actually, the way they treat it, the rules on this railroad are when you're in the high railer or a speeder, the automobiles have the right of way at the crossings.
Oh, really?
So we have to be aware of them, because if there's someone approaching the crossing, we have to stop and wait for them to cross. I guess it's just safer that way.
Right. Plus, it's not heavy enough to trip the signal to run the bell.
No, it won't do it. So we just we don't have the right of way. Usually the train has the right of way. We didn't.
We're not a train.
And we're not. We can't whistle for the crossings because we have no whistle.
Aw.
And no bell.
Right.
Darn it. Approaching Lane City, which is almost all the way at the far end of Robinson Canyon, but it's the last road crossing before you hit Keystone, and we have to get off the tracks at a road crossing because that's the nature of a high railer.
Oh, wow.
So we had to stop at the Lane City crossing and then pull the metal wheels up and drive back to town as an automobile.
Oh.
Because that's part of the experience,
right.
is getting to run it both ways. Sweet. Parking brake. The rules here require that Con be the one to actually get the vehicle off of the tracks, because there's a little knack to doing that. And then he also drove us down the canyon. They don't want us driving in the canyon. But once we got back to Ely, then he was going to turn the steering wheel back over to me, so I got a chance to drive it as an automobile.
Almost dragged Maine.
Almost dragged Maine. And this is one fine, fine ride to be dragging Maine in, I'll tell you what.
That's sweet.
What a fun car. Wouldn't it be fun to show up at a car show with this guy?
Oh, wouldn't that be like Rat Fink, for instance?
Rat Fink, I bet they've never had a high railer.
I've looked. I've never seen one.
I've never seen one there, and I'm just sort of willing to bet that no one's ever shown up with a Pontiac high railer at the Rat Fink reunion.
It'd be a first.
But they should.
They should.
That would be a blast. And actually, Rat Fink reunion was just yesterday.
Right.
And we were there.
Of course.
Everything's kind of delayed here. This was last weekend that we were playing with this car, and then this weekend we're at the Rat Fink reunion.
Yes, I'm glad the road leads there from here, but yeah.
Yeah.
It rides nice.
Oh, yeah.
It does.
These old cars, I mean, I love them. I love the speedometer in this thing. I think they used to call them something like a safety speedometer.
It's really neat. You get this whole red pattern coming around showing your speed.
Right, instead of having the wand that shows what speed you're going, it's a little, either an arrow or a disc of some kind that turns. It's just interesting.
The whole area gets colored in red.
Right.
That's really neat.
Exactly.
They gotta wander. Yeah.
And drifting back and forth.
Because you can always spot when there's an older car, because there's a lot of steering wheel going on. If you were to let go of the steering wheel, you'd be in the guardrail in no time at all, because the whole front end is just kind of... You know, the train crews today who are out driving on the various high railers for even the big railroads like Union Pacific, I wonder if they think of this as fun.
They might.
I would hope so.
Right. Actually, it would be so neat to have a job that is just fun.
Yeah, and I think even though you're out doing maintenance on the, probably not on the tracks, but on the electronics and who knows just what, out on a pickup truck high railer, I would hope that it's just fun.
Oh, I would imagine it would be. I've often thought if I was a young person, I wouldn't mind getting a job out here.
Yeah. Well, we're just about back into town, which means that I get to take the wheel again.
Right.
Because that's part of the whole experience. You get to drive it both ways. And in this case, just as I was pulling out from the curb, the entire throttle linkage came loose.
Oh, you know, these older cars, that was another thrill of the day, is have your linkage come loose.
Yeah, you just never know what
No
problems.
go.
So I'm going, it isn't going anywhere. So we had to pull over and connect the throttle linkage back up. And then we were off.
We're back down the road again.
But, oh my gosh, you forget how sloppy the handling is on these old cars.
You know, for its day and age, it would have been considered a nice ride, but boy, they had a lot of play in the steering wheel.
It's like driving a tugboat.
Exactly.
So they dropped the mask restrictions on the train now?
Yep. Yeah, we were under TSA and DOT and the FRA stuff. And once all that went away, it went away for us too.
Well, that was really fun.
Oh, I imagine.
It's just amazing. And now Con will take this back to its garage and put it away until somebody else wants to drive it.
Well, now that I've seen it done, I wouldn't mind trying it.
You should.
I should.
You should, because you've already passed your book of rules. So.
I did.
So that's a major accomplishment just in and of itself.
Right.
But it's just so fun to drive this thing. Be fun to do the STEAM program.
Right. You
And
should
run
save
this-
for that one, too.
Yeah, it's a little
Get your
expensive.
certificate for that one.
Yeah, a little expensive, but you know.
Oh, well. You only live
what
once.
the heck?
So
You only
yeah.
live once. And this is just too darn much fun.
Right.
Well, later in the day, we rode the train.
We did.
They call this the Silver State Express,
Yes.
the evening train.
Nice.
And they hand out little samples of silver ore, well, processed silver, little bottles full of silver, and then a medallion with the
Right.
seal of the state of Nevada
Isn't that neat?
to prove that you rode the Silver State Express.
They still have the spider webs from that
Yeah, they never take them down. Well, that, as they say, is a story for another day.
It is.
So we will follow up with that. If you haven't been over to the channel, or heaven forbid you're not a subscriber, then you want to get over to the channel and you want to subscribe by clicking on the blue button right there.
Yes.
Well, we're not sure how you found this fun and interesting video on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring, and we will see you here on Tuesday with some of that fun.
Right.
We'll see you then.
See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.